So hi guys, last time I did the 1950s decade review. This time we're doing the 1960s decade review. So this is a pretty interesting decade, I'll be honest. This was around the end of the space race era, I guess you can say. What else? Trying to think. The first full decade where Fidel Castro was the ruler of Cuba. Yeah, he'd go on to be ruler for a really long time. What else? I'm trying to think. Happened in the 60s. This is before Steve Jobs made Apple and shit. So this was like before the information age, I guess. Slightly before, yeah. So yeah, most media was like newspaper and shit like that. Probably. But yeah, this decade, I'd say this is really when like the birth of our modern like system of like, you know, politics, which is neoliberalism, I think, or something. Yeah, this was the birth of that around this time through the hippies, I think they started that. Yeah. Anyways, here we go. Let's break down this decade. Okay, 1960. Let's see. What was the thing with 1960? So JFK won the 1960 election. It was a pretty interesting year, 1960. And then the year after that, 1961, he gets inaugurated into office. 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis occurs, where U.S. almost goes to war with Cuba. Also, I think in 1961, the Bay of Pigs happened, or was it 62? I don't know. 1963, The Wrinkle in Time comes out. I read that book. It's pretty fucking boring, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really get into it. It's kind of forgettable. It's a blur to me. 1964, I think, what the fuck happened that year? 1964, let me see. Oh wait, 1960, oh my god, I'm an idiot. 1963, I forgot. John F. Kennedy got assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. So, 1963, LBJ becomes president. 1964, the Civil Rights Act gets passed, which ends segregation completely. Yep, that's good. 1965, the Vietnam War starts. That was a whole mess of a war, let's be honest. 1966, Ghost and Mr. Chicken with Don Knotts came out. Funny as fuck. I love that movie. 1967, El Dorado with John Wayne comes out. Another really good movie. 1968, trying to think. Happened in 1968. Actually, this is a shitty year. So what happens in this year, John F. Kennedy's son, or JFK Jr., gets assassinated. And also the same year, Martin Luther King Jr. gets assassinated. I think Malcolm X gets assassinated. Like, yeah, this was a crazy year for assassinations. 1968. 1969. I think it's the earliest year you can go on YouTube. I think, because I have like a little 1969, 1970 glitch on YouTube. Yeah. Even sometimes when I submit assignments, it says submitted in 1969. It's like I'm fucking time traveling or something. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, 1969, pretty interesting year. Woodstock 1969 happens. I think that's with like Jimi Hendrix and stuff. I think it was like a hippie event or something. I'm not sure. Uh, yeah, yeah. Like I said, 1960s was like the year where hippie mania really started. Uh, yeah. Let's see. 1969, there was Woodstock, like I said. Uh, the what else? I'm trying to think. The Neil Armstrong lands on the moon in 1969, summer 1969. People debate whether it's real or not. I'd say it's real. Yeah. But yeah, who knows really? I think the only one who would truly know really is whoever. Well, probably Neil Armstrong himself, really. But yeah, that happens. Landing on the moon was a really good accomplishment, not gonna lie. And yeah, that's pretty cool. 1960s, what else I like about this decade? Movies were really good. Movies were excellent in this decade. Yeah, trying to think. So this was before political correctness, so a lot of movies were like politically incorrect, which is fine in my opinion because it allows more free experimentation when you make movies that way. What I didn't like about this decade really was the let's see, I guess like the rise of like bad fashion and stuff like that. Yeah, fashion really starts to suck in this decade, not gonna lie. Also, like, a lot of the ideals we have today started in this decade. Yeah. But other than that, like, I mean, the 60s, music was great. I'll admit, music in the 60s was excellent. There was The Circle, there was Rolling Stones, there was the Beatles, there was the Monkees, there was, who else was another band? I'm trying to think from the 60s. There was the Beach Boys, I think. The Chordettes, they were a female band in the early 60s. I listened to their music, pretty good music. I think they were late 50s though, I'm not sure actually. Elvis was still making music, although his 50s music is better, let's be honest. But his music started to become more original in this decade. He didn't copy off of musicians as much. Fashion, like I said, we started to get out of the suit and dress phase. We start to get more modern fashion, like the one we have today with like the pants and long sleeve shirts and stuff like that. But yeah, this was the first modern decade for fashion, I'd say. What else? Yeah, like I said, fashion this decade's bad, but not as bad. Actually, kind of like, yeah, ever since the 60s, it's been kind of the same. Let's see. Let's see. What else? Architecture, I mean, I don't think I need to go through this. Architecture was, meh, kind of forgettable. VCR, I guess, is the first full decade where VCR is a thing. It was founded in 1959, I think. I'm not sure. I thought I mentioned that in my 50s review. Yeah. What else? I'm trying to think. Presidents. JFK. Lyndon B. Johnson. In the very tail end of the decade, we get Nixon, who fucking sucks. Yeah. I mean, not that LBJ was that good. I mean, I'll admit, he did pass the Civil Rights Act, which is a great accomplishment, but his handling of the Vietnam War was piss poor. Just gonna be honest here. His handling of the Vietnam War was terrible. Yeah. What else? I'm trying to think. What else is a thing I could say about the 60s? I guess, like, cars in this decade were pretty good still. Although, towards like the tail end of the decade, like the late 60s, car designs really started to get bad. I'm not gonna lie. It started to become a little too boxy. It's sort of like, you went from looking like this to this. Like just a flat piece of paper really. Which I didn't like. But like early to mid 60s had good car designs. Late 60s, not really. Let's see, economy, still pretty good, not as good as the 50s though. You could still get a fast food job and pay for rent at this time. It was a simpler time, what can I say? Let's see. What I like about this time, I guess, like applications, they were simpler back then because you didn't have to fucking use online. You could just write the paper and apply. Simpler times, you know? Whereas today you have to do all this online application stuff. And that didn't start out yet until a little bit later on. Was VCR popular in the 60s? I don't know. Probably not, really. That's more of a 70s, 80s thing. And, you know, stuff like that. What else can I say about the 60s? Let's see. Besides what I just said, this was like a pretty important decade for the Cold War, I'd say, because of the whole Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis that happened earlier in the decade when JFK was alive. Yeah. Mid to late 60s sort of transition to the Vietnam War involvement and stuff like that. There were a lot of like protests on like the draft and stuff. People didn't want to go to war. Yeah, stuff like that. And this was the last time where the president had authority to do that before they changed the law in the 70s. Yeah. Also, yeah, this was the last full decade where the draft was mandatory, I think. This is also the last full decade where, let's see. Last full decade where, let me see. Where the adult age, the minimum adult age was 21. They changed it the decade after. I'm not gonna tell you when until the 70s decade review. But yeah, that happened. Yeah, all in all, despite some flaws, I'd say it's still a good decade actually. Not as good as the 50s, but pretty good decade. So out of 10, I'm gonna be giving the 60s a 8.4 out of 10. It's a pretty good decade. Yeah. No complaints really, except maybe a few, but yeah. But yeah, that's my ranking. I mean, no, that's my review on the 60s. Let me see if I can find any 60s inventions. Hold up real quick. Let me see. Let me see here. 1960s inventions. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the deaths in the 1960s. So, Stan Laurel from Laurel and Hardy died in this decade, unfortunately. Buster Keaton also died in this decade, which sucks. Ooh. So, what got invented in the 1960s? I'm going to list it right now. Computer mouse, audio cassette. So basically, without this decade, there'd be no VCR or VHS, really. Kevlar. Lasers were used for the first time in this decade. LED. Computer memory. Without computer memory, there'd be no computer RAM. Lava lamp. Unix. Valium. I think, when was toothpaste invented? Had to be invented around this time. Come on. It would be cool if it was. Okay, toothpaste has been a thing since way before the 60s. I thought it started in the 60s, to be honest, because 60s is when I noticed, like, hygiene start to get better. Yeah. But yeah, that's the 60s. I mean, yeah, pretty good decade, honestly. I mean, I like the 60s, but would I live in it? I'd probably be bored as fuck, I'll be honest. There's no video games in the 60s. I mean, there was, but those were like mainly scientific video games. They weren't public video games until the 70s. But yeah. Yeah, let me know what you like or dislike about the 60s. Anyways, peace.